being the frontman looks great, but it's actually one of the worst roles in Squid Game, from being forced to work that to having a sad life. Today, I'll be going through every painful reason as to why it sucks to be the frontman. But first, we need to see how he gets into it in the first place. He first entered the games as a participant, player 132. He joined the game so he could afford his pregnant wife's liver transplant, and somehow after going through it all like Ji-hun, he manages to win and get the prize money. But it was all for naught, because it was already too late to save her. After all this, he was just sad and felt like he lost it all. And for that reason, he joined the Squid Game again, not as a player, but as the frontman. Yeah, not sure why either. I mean, losing your wife like that is beyond miserable, sure, but why return to the nightmare? Maybe after everything, the games were the only thing that made sense to him? Now, there's a theory about In-ho. It says that Il-nam and In-ho are actually father and son. So the fans based this entire theory mostly on one thing, milk. Yeah, here's how they got it. So in Season 1 Episode 3, Ji-hun asks the guards who were distributing food if he could trade his plain milk for chocolate milk, because he's never been able to digest plain milk. Obviously, the guard doesn't care and refuses. Now, Il-nam hears this conversation and remarks on his preferences. Now, nobody really noticed this at the time, but when the second season came in Episode 5, In-ho doesn't drink plain milk either. The players were given bread and milk. In-ho only ate his bread and passed his milk to Jun-hee, who was pregnant. Now, sure, just because In-ho doesn't like plain milk, it doesn't make him Il-nam's son. But there's an actual possibility. First of all, In-ho has the same number in Season 2 as Il-nam. Also, they both give the same surnames, Oh Il-nam and Oh Young-il. That's two os right there. Now, would a twist like this feel a bit much for Squid Game? Oh, probably. Especially since the show already hit us with the whole secret family member thing with the frontman reveal. But it's not impossible. Il-nam mentions multiple times in Season 1 that he has a son, singular. On his deathbed, he even tells Ji-hun that he once lived in an alleyway house with his wife and son. But here's where it gets tricky. In Season 2, we find out that In-ho and Jun-ho are half-brothers, sharing only a father. If Il-nam was In-ho's dad, that would mean he's Jun-ho's dad too, which doesn't really add up, considering Jun-ho's mother refers to In-ho as her stepson. So unless Il-nam had some secret double life, this theory might not hold up. But still, that doesn't fully rule out the theory. It's totally possible that Il-nam abandoned In-ho with Jun-ho's mother and just, well, never looked back. Maybe he didn't raise Jun-ho or even consider him a son. Poor Jun-ho. Still, there's not a whole lot to go on. If In-ho were Il-nam's son, 256, the implications would be insane. Did they know about each other before In-ho entered the games? Were they reunited after he won in 2015? Maybe Il-nam never got the chance to raise his son properly because he was forever stuck in these games. Also, here's what's crazy. If Il-nam knew In-ho was his son before the games, that means he let him complete his life instead of, well, you know, just giving him the money to save his wife, which is beyond messed up. Now here's the best case. They reconnected after In-ho became the frontman. The worst case? Il-nam sat back and watched his son risk everything just for the hell of it. Now, all of that, everything I just said, is still just a theory. Because, you know, not liking milk doesn't automatically make you somebody's son. But all this leaves us with is an important question. Why would anyone want to even be the frontman or a guard? Does it pay well? Oh, probably. But like, what are you even spending it on? As far as I'm concerned, you're stuck on that island 24/7 unless you get the honor of dropping off a winner back to the real world. But let's break it down. Imagine you're the frontman. You wake up, probably at some ridiculous hour because the games always start super early. You brush your teeth, take a shower, and squeeze into that stiff, uncomfortable suit. Then, you spend the rest of the day watching people die playing children's games. Go to sleep, wake up, repeat. Seriously, how is this a good gig? Unless you're some crazy psychopath like the salesman dude, I don't think anyone's gonna like this gig. Now, here's something I've been thinking about. We know that the games all take place for only like a week in a year. What does he do the rest of the year? This? I'm just kidding. I guess he and his team are just constantly prepping for the next game. But have you ever thought about how much behind-the-scenes work goes into making all of this happen? I mean, just look at the milk carton we talked about. It even has a personalized Squid Game logo on it. So yeah, they literally have a graphic designer for all of this. Kind of funny to imagine that there's a guy on a Zoom call with the Squid Game branding team. Hello, this is the frontman speaking. Yeah, so about the milk branding. Yeah, I'm not feeling it. Can we go make the colors brighter? Maybe some shading on the shapes. That'd be terrific. All jokes aside, it's probably just a whole lot of planning. He doesn't just roll in a day before the Squid Game starts. Nah, he's working year-round, scouting potential guards, players, and recruiters. Researching who's desperate enough, who's got the right psychological profile. Then there's the logistics like building out the game sets, making sure there's enough food and water, figuring out what fresh psychological torment he can throw at the players to keep the VIPs entertained. It's a full-time job, no doubt. And at the end of the day, maybe he enjoys it. Maybe it gives him some kind of twisted purpose. Or maybe it's just his coping mechanism. Because the guy is probably as lonely as it gets. Being around his family? A painful reminder he can't bear. So he isolates himself on the island. 0 friends, just whiskey and a Netflix backlog. And mostly he thinks about these games because that's the only distraction that works. That's why, when he finally has some company again, he actually cracks jokes, toasts a drink, and for a moment forgets that he's the villain. Now sure, it all seems like an act now because we know he betrays Ji-hun and the team at the end. But in the moment, it felt pretty real. Now, does being the frontman sound great? Maybe, if you're someone like In-ho who's lost everything and is just clinging to whatever purpose he can find. Or if you're as unhinged as the salesman. Otherwise, I don't think anyone would want to spend most of their life watching people drop dead. Not exactly a cool gig. The suit's cool, though. Now, we know why being the frontman sucks. But you know who sucks even more? The guards. And it only gets worse the further down you go from square to circle. Now, who even are these guards? And how do they even get recruited? The most popular theory was that they were also given the red versus blue choice, just like the players. Sounds possible, but there's also another theory. What if they're just former players who voted to leave and never came back? I mean, it kinda makes sense. They already know the game, they're still broke, and also it looks like they're just as disposable as the players. Plus, some of them were so desperate they resorted to organ harvesting. That's what we thought after Season 1. But then Season 2 came along and hit us with guard number 11. Turns out they just scout people with military backgrounds who are just broke and know how to take orders. That's it. No secret player to guard pipeline, just more people getting thrown into the cycle because, well, they need money. But now, do they even get to leave? Do they even have vacation days? Can't they just walk out after a week and hit up a bar in Seoul like nothing happened? No clue. But if their lives are anything like the frontman's, yeah, I really doubt it. Now, let's see how it gets even worse as you go down the ranks. The pink guards have their own little hierarchy. Circles handle cleaning, triangles do the killing, and squares run the show. And from what we've seen, most of them are young, probably just desperate people picked from the same pool as the players. Now, I'm pretty sure the triangle and circle guards aren't much better off than the players. They get thrown into this mess, do all the dirty work, get some cash, and if they step out of line, yeah, they're dead. A lot of them were probably forced into it, kind of like how most players had nothing waiting for them outside, so they just chose to stay in the game. Same deal with the guards. No jobs, no future, just a slightly better position over the players. But in the end, to the VIPs, they're just dogs, same as the contestants. Now, the square guards, they have a slightly better one compared to the others. They're clearly more trusted, more in the loop. Maybe they started as low-ranked guards and worked their way up. We know ranks exist because the salesman literally told Ji-hun he was happy to finally get a gun, meaning he started out as a worker before moving up. And since he's ranked even higher than the managers, that means there's a whole system we still don't fully see. Now, let's check out their lifestyle. From what we saw through Junho's POF, being a guard is basically a shit job. Tiny cell, zero entertainment, strict rules that'll get you killed if you break them, stuck on an island with terrible phone service and probably no Wi-Fi, and on top of all of that, you have to murder people. Doesn't really seem comfortable. Now, let's say it's a high-paying gig and they only work a few weeks a year. Could they just go home and live a normal life after that? I really doubt that. The organization definitely keeps tabs on their people, too much of a risk if they don't. But that would also mean a ton of manpower just to monitor ex-guards, which seems like a logistical headache. Anyhow, after all this, I gotta say it's not a good gig. Yeah, maybe you get a fat paycheck for a few weeks of work, but at the end of the day, it's a shit job and it sucks to be one of them. Frontman, square, triangle, circle, don't really matter. They all pretty much have it bad. Oh, and before we wrap this thing up, I really want to know what you guys think the frontman does in his free time. Please, drop your theories in the comments. Now, Season 3 is almost here, or at least that's what they say, and it's got a lot of questions to answer. Personally, I can't wait to see if the whole Ji-hun turning into the bad guy thing actually happens. Guess we'll find out pretty soon.